So the first thing I'm going to do now is outline the design with my V-gouge. And I'm going to start with the flag and the flag pole. And then eventually I'm going to come back and do stop cuts, but this is just going to kind of give me my depths. So now I'm doing an extra pass along the same area that I just did, and I'm going quite a bit deeper here. I'm hoping to get down to about 1/4 of an inch. And you obviously have to be careful that you're not making plunge marks into the side of the flag, because there's going to be obviously marks there that you're not going to want, that are going to be difficult to remove. So you have to make sure you stop before you plunge into the side of it. Alright, we're just going to keep going there with the outlining. I'm going to do the same thing with the flag and then the rope. And then you have to be really careful with these two spots here because they'll chip out pretty easy if you go in too hard or you're just not careful in that area. Now the one thing I'm making sure with this rope is that I'm not going as deep as I went with the pole and flag, just because it's so skinny and it's going to be very fragile and delicate. I'm probably only going to do one decent pass. I went 2 passes here, probably got down to 1/4 of an inch, but with this one I'm going to be very shallow just to make sure it's strong. Then what I'm going to do to kind of taper this line here that I made, so I'm just going to hold my V-gouge on its side to kind of clean that up and smoothen it out. And what I'm also doing at the same time is I'm running my V-gouge right along the edge of this. And because with the V-gouge, my first pass, there's a slight slanted element to it. So I'm going back through and I'm kind of making that more vertical just to give it a more kind of harsh line. And then obviously when it connects to the pole, I'm gonna have to taper that in a little bit more and address that, but I'm not gonna do that right now. All right, so I got that down to about the depths that I want it, about 1/4 of an inch. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of clean up the edges there and get rid of that harsh line that was made by the V-gouge. So I'm just gonna take my shallow gouge and just do some tapering. See, I ruined that because I was too aggressive, so I'm gonna have to carve in deeper just to get down to the area that I chipped out. So let's address this area that I screwed up on. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna go in deeper on both sides with my V-gouge and then smoothen the top to where it gets down to the area that I chipped out. A little bit more. And the goal is to just give it a gradual dip down to save that chip out, so then it's not like super obvious. Okay, I'm going to take my shallow gouge and just gradually carve down to that chip out depth. Might as well just carve the top of this too to get rid of the pen lines here. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So I got the background kind of textured here and things tapered towards the design, but now I'm going to do my vertical stop cuts around the flag, the pole, and then I already kind of did it, I guess, around the rope, but I'll probably fine tune it a little bit. I'm first going to start off with my V-gouge on its side and try to do as much as I can with that, but just to get it precise on some of these tighter spots, I'm probably going to have to use some smaller gouges in order to do that. And it might not work with my V-gouge on its side, but we're going to give it a try. Basically, the goal is just to get it perfectly vertical all the way around, so then when I start shaping the flag during my next step, it maintains its shape and structure, I guess. Because if you start shaping it with it tapered how it is, it's gonna gradually get bigger as you get deeper. So next I'm going to shape the flag, and my plan in doing this is those two center lines. I'm going to take my V-gouge and run along the side of those, and then to the right of that, where it kind of dips down, I'm going to take my probably medium depth gouge and then really dig in there and try to get it close to the background, almost to the background, and then I'm going to blend it. So we're just gonna go right on this line here. And we're gonna take this almost, because this is the deepest part of the flow of the flag, this spot and then this spot. So we're gonna bring these two spots all the way to the background almost. Leave a little space, but as far as you can go. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to taper that, get rid of that hard line that I created, and kind of taper it from where I just went in to the right. And then I'm going to round this edge here slightly. So then the high point of this part of the flag is like right here. Okay, and then I'm going to round this edge here over. And then I'm going to take a small V-gouge, and then I'm going to undercut this edge here just to give it that separation. Okay, and then I gotta address this spot right in here, and then I'm gonna basically apply the same technique that I did here, right here. I'm gonna need some files here to kind of clean that up, but I'm fairly pleased with. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing on this side, just round it and then undercut and then address this little area in here. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of round this a little bit more and then sand the flag here to where it's nice and smooth. I'm gonna give it a little shape on this side too here. Just taper it slightly towards the pole. Now I might have to clean up the edges of the background here around the flag because I probably made a lot of plunge marks, so I'm gonna have to clean that up. Obviously it's best case scenario if you can shape the flag and do it without making these plunge marks into the background, because then you're gonna spend a bunch of time cleaning that. But sometimes it's really difficult not to. This corner right here I'm going to have to clean up with my number 7. It's just a little deeper. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give the post some roundness to it. I'm going to shape that, and then the ball at the top, and then I'll address the 2 corners where the rope connect to the post. Now this was kind of splitting out on me, so I stopped ahead of time and I went in from the other direction to kind of prevent it from chipping further, but there is basically there's some splitting here that I have to fix now, so I'm going to have to go in a little bit deeper. And then I'm going to just drop these 2 points of the flag back with my V-gouge. I'm going to use my small V-gouge. Just going to blend that in a little bit with my file. Right? I'm going to start shaping this ball a little bit. I'm going to use my small shallow gouge to do this. And it's really important to go slow and be very careful and make sure you're carving in the correct direction, otherwise it's going to chip out on you. I'm kind of holding it upside down just to round it a little bit more and clean it up. I might just leave it how it is. I don't think I'm going to sand that at all. That's pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that. So now we're gonna have to address the 2 points where the rope come in contact with the pole. And so I had to push the pole a little bit further back, especially down here. So we kind of lost where that rope comes in. So we're gonna have to readdress that and go in deeper in order to, I guess, let the rope make that connection. And then we're gonna have to make it a little skinnier because it gets a little wider as it comes in contact with the post. We're probably gonna have to use like a skew knife or something to clean that up. We're almost like chip carving here. Okay, and I'll go back to my small V gouge and kind of tilt it on its side and ride it along the edge. Like that. Pretty good. Okay, and then this, like I said, I'm gonna have to go quite a bit deeper here in order to reestablish that rope. Even this skew isn't skinny enough really to get in there in the spot, but okay, it's here. Okay, and then back to my V gouge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the sides of this rope with my V gouge and just, I guess, clean it up, make it a little bit skinnier, and then I'm going to round it. I'm going to do my best to round it, but I'm not going to get too crazy with it. Next I'm going to start the, I guess, landscaping area with the bushes and the rocks. And so first thing I'll do is outline the bushes and the rocks with my V gouge. And again, I'm going to try to get down to a similar depth as the flag and the pole, so I'm thinking about 1/4 of an inch. That's kind of my goal for this project. I don't know, I don't want to get any deeper than that. And this can obviously be done with a mallet too, but I've got my camera mount right here and I don't really want to shake the camera, so. And it doesn't have to be pretty. We're just kind of trying to get down to our depths fairly quickly. Obviously we had to be a lot careful with the flag because these corners are super important, but the bushes and the rocks, I mean, they can be easily adjusted and it's not going to be that big of a deal. Okay, now I'm going to do my tapering, get rid of this hard line that I made with my shallower gouge. I've been using a number 5 to do my tapering, so. Okay, so I got a couple passes around the bushes here and kind of the ground where it connects to the sky, but I think I'm gonna try to go a little bit deeper. But I'm gonna take my V-gouge and hold it on its side, and I'm gonna try to do some, I guess it would be like the vertical stop cuts, but I'm gonna do it similar to how I did the rest, and do the V-gouge on its side. So I'm gonna kind of try to kill two birds with one stone and remove this edge as well as go a little bit deeper. And then some of these tighter spots, I'm obviously not going to be able to probably get in there, so I'm going to have to do the traditional stop cut method with those. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of clean up these little tight nooks that I couldn't get at with the regular V-gouge. I'm going to have to use my small gouge here. Just to give it a little bit more jagged edge, I'm gonna add some of these little cuts and slits in around the outside of these bushes here with my gouge that I've got. So the next thing I'm going to do is outline the trunk of the bush here, and then go over these kind of squiggly lines here to, create additional depth within the bush. So I'll start with my V-gouge. I'm going to outline it then with my small shallow gouge. Okay, now I'm going to use my V-gouge and go over these squiggly lines. This doesn't have to be super fancy or, perfect, because we're going to try to replicate a Dremel texture with the gouges. So we're going to try to give it that leafy, bushy texture. So I'm just gonna go around them first. Oops. No. Okay, now I'm going to go over these lines, and then I'm going to taper from top to bottom into that line that I just made. And you can kind of just give it a little jagged edge. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to try to go a little deeper. Then we're going to kind of round the edges of the bush before we try to do the texturing. Okay, and then we're gonna get rid of these hard lines that were created by the V-gouge, and we're gonna taper from top to bottom, so top into that line. You might need to use a small gouge. So I can do this a couple of different ways, and one thought I have is taking a very small gouge, but it's got to be, it has to have pretty steep sides, so like a veiner or something like that, a number 11, but very small. And basically you would be just doing kind of like a scooping motion. So I've thought about trying that. Otherwise, taking a small, more flat gouge, you know, a shallower gouge, number 3 or something like that, and just do a bunch of little, I guess, a bunch of little V cuts throughout. So I'm going to try both of those methods and see what works best. And again, I'm just trying to replicate that leaf, you know, a leaf texture. So there's a lot of edges, there's some depth, but with the Dremel it's very easy. But with the gouges, it's a little bit more difficult. So Okay, I'm going to take my V-gouge and try to get a little bit more depth, kind of doing the same thing. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to go around the edge and just kind of rock the gouge back and forth. That was about there. Okay, then I'm going to move to my small V-gouge here. Get in the crevices even more. It's going to kind of feel messy and chaotic while you're doing this, but like that's kind of what you're trying to replicate, is just the randomness of the bush, the leaves in the bush, or the whatever the bush is. It's just I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but okay, and then I'm going to take a small shallow gouge and then just kind of rock it across the bushes. Now I'm just going to go around the outside of that bush and make a couple more jagged sections. Now I still gotta work on this bottom part of the bush, but I'm gonna go and kind of establish this ground section where the bush is, kind of, I guess, where the mulch in a sense would go. But I'm gonna work on that now. I'm just rounding this branch here with my V-gouge. Now I guess I'm just gonna keep going with this bush texture. got the texturing all done with the bushes, so the next thing I'm going to do is outline the rocks with my V-gouge and then shape each individual rock. Oops. That was a big slip. We can fix that. Probably go around one more time and then I'll do my tapering. Okay, now I'm going to do my tapering with my medium depth gouge. There we go, my slip has been fixed. I'm going to outline each individual rock, and I'm going to kind of go over this groove that I had just created with my other V-gouge and then my tapering. So I'm going to use my small V-gouge and kind of hold it on its side to kind of make this line a little bit more vertical here, and then I'm going to outline each individual rock and start shaping it. And I'm going to have to address the top of the rocks too. I'll probably have to do some vertical stop cuts with a small gouge. So next we're just going to do a bunch of tapering with these rocks. And so it's really important to have sharp gouges so then you're not going to, I guess, chip anything out or push some of the grain, because you're going to want that jagged edge. You're not going to want to do a whole lot of sanding or pudsey work. And plus, there's not a whole lot of room for error with these because there's not a whole lot of depth. I mean, we've got an inch to work with, but the deeper you go, you can kind of distort and make it look funny if one area is kind of oddly deeper than the other. So carving with the grain is really important, as well as sharp gouges to make sure these rocks are good. And so I'm just going to kind of connect where the rocks come in contact with the ground, and then same back here. So I'll kind of do that first, and then I'll go around and start tapering and shaping each individual rock.
I'm just kind of cleaning up the edges now of these rocks, kind of doing that slight undercut method, holding it on its side to give it a more harsh straight line into the grass layer below it. With this small gouge, it's not like a huge undercut, but it's just a little bit to just give it some additional separation. This is kind of the importance of cutting with the grain and making sure you're not pulling any of the grain out or chipping anything, because when you do, it's really difficult to fix because it's kind of a domino effect here. So now I'm kind of battling with this rock here, trying to make it, smoothing it out and get rid of kind of the graininess to it. So now I have to drop this rock back, which inevitably I may have to drop this one back. So it just emphasizes the importance of sharp tools and making sure you're paying attention when you make these cuts, because if it doesn't go right, it can be quite frustrating to fix. Now I'm going to have to fix this because I had to go as deep as the sky. So now the sky is kind of bleeding into the ground texture here. So I'm going to have to fix that. Boy, this gouge is just not working very well here. Next, I'm gonna just address this horizon line here where the grass meets the sky. This side is clearly way higher than this side, so I already have a line here to even it out, so I'm just gonna fix that. So the next thing I'm going to do is start working on the grass texture, and my plan is to take a smaller gouge, but that's relatively deep. Like mine that I got here is number 7-4. I'm first going to taper this here, this hard line that I created, and then I'm going to make horizontal lines with this smaller but deeper gouge. Just to create some ridges, and then I'm going to do the rocking motion to create the grass texture. So that's the plan. So I'm going to do my tapering here now and just give this a little texture. Then I need to taper it towards the sky to where this hard line is gone as well. And then the idea between these two areas, the sky and the grass, is the 2 points, the 2 layers are kind of coming together, which is going to give it that lighting change. But also the variation in the texturing will give it that change as well. So the eye is going to know what's the sky and what's the ground. So this, I'm just going to leave this how it is with the gouge stroke background on the sky, and then the vertical lines with the gouge with the rocking motion of the smaller gouge will give it that just change in texture, and again will allow the eye to see that, okay, this is grass and then that's sky. I'm going to start off, before I go to my smaller gouge, I'm going to start off with my bigger one, and just kind of establish that horizontal edge, because right now I kind of have some vertical stuff going on. So this is going to be kind of semi-difficult because I'm going to be cutting cross grain. So I'm going to have to be careful and very particular. I'm probably going to have to kind of do a slight rotation with the gouge as I make the cut, just to kind of encourage cutting of the grain. Because if it's gonna push, and you're probably gonna have some breaking of the grain. So the area on the grass layer here where it's closer to the sky, that's where I'm going to apply the smaller gouge, just to kind of create a little distance there. Just going to go over the grass texture again, just kind of giving it a little extra depth in areas. The last thing I'm going to do with the grass texture is just kind of go from left to right and right to left and just kind of rock my gouge back and forth. The next thing I'm going to do is apply a similar texture to this area right here. I guess it would be the mulch underneath the bushes here. Not a huge deal, just giving it just a slight texture. So the final step here in the actual carving portion is to redraw the flag back onto the carved portion of the flag and then carve in the stripes. So the plan is I'm going to be very, very shallow and delicate with I'm just going to do an outline, basically as shallow as I can possibly carve, just to establish the different lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some strategic staining and then stain in the dark portions of the stripes in the flag. Okay, so I got this compass with a pencil that I'm going to use to draw the lines on here. So the stripes and my carved flag didn't completely match up, so this spot and this spot I'm gonna have to trim a little bit with my gouges. I'm just gonna use this small shallow gouge to do the trimming here. So everything should line up here now. I've got the 13 stripes. Now I'm going to go over these lines with a very small V gouge, just to basically as shallow as I possibly can, just to create that slight separation between the stripes. And then my plan is to do some like strategic stain painting to actually get the lines darker. portion is all done. Next, I'm going to go over my staining process, and this still is kind of being fine-tuned. I've been kind of experimenting with some like shading and almost like stain painting. So I'm going to kind of go through that process with you regarding this flag design here. What I'm going to do first is apply a coat across the entire project, front and back and sides, with a natural colored stain. And then I'm going to follow that up with a very light, I guess it would be a stain of your choice. Basically, it's a dark stain that is, it's diluted down with mineral spirits to a lighter color. So I generally like to go with English chestnut here, and then I just dilute it down with mineral spirits, and it's about a 5-to-1 mixture. So it would be like 20% English chestnut and then 80% mineral spirit. So it's fairly light. But then I'm going to apply a coat of that across the entire surface, and then I'm going to start the stain painting. I personally prefer these bristle brushes. I guess I don't know exactly what they're called, but they don't have a ton of bristles. It's fairly thinned out, which I personally like because I made a mistake and I used these large brushes here, and they just absorb way too much stain, and way too much stain gets applied on the project. So these, you can kind of be a little bit more strategic with your application. And then generally they don't say to use, what would it be, like synthetic brush material with oil-based stuff, but I guess I don't generally care. It works out fairly well for me. But this is what I use to do my strategic stain painting, you could call it. So, but the first thing I'm going to do is apply a layer to the entire project with this natural oil-based stain. I got more stuff. Now the idea behind applying this first coat of natural is just because the wood is so dry that it's going to absorb really quick and aggressively. So the thought is that the wood's going to absorb this natural color and still maintain, it's almost like a pre-coating application, like with, I guess I don't know what it's technically called, but and I personally like to use these blue shop rags because they don't leave off any fuzzies. Because especially when you start wiping off the extra stain on the carved side, it's gonna rip off and it's gonna be kind of annoying to clean up fuzzies. So, okay. Then we'll do the same thing on the carved side here. Then you can use this other one that you haven't really used at all. It's nice and dry to kind of soak up a lot of the cracks and crevices where it kind of pooled, and because you don't want a bunch of pooling. And you can kind of use your towel there to clean it up. And the only thing is sometimes these brushes can break off and get kind of stuck in the stain, and so you have to make sure you find those, if that does happen, to find those and remove them before you do any sort of like finishing, like polyurethane or lacquer or anything like that.
Okay, and I'm just gonna wipe the excess off here across the whole thing. It isn't necessarily, I don't do it a ton with shallow relief stuff, but a lot of times with my medium or deep relief, there's a lot of nooks and crannies that are really difficult to remove the pooling of the stain. So sometimes I'll use a combination of my file and then my paper towel, and then it's a lot easier to, I just kind of poke it in there. It's a good way to soak up some of the extra stuff that you can't reach with anything else. Now I'm going to apply my mixture. It'd be my 5-to-1 English chestnut and mineral spirits mixture here. Now I applied this when the natural stain was still, see, here's a fuzzy. I applied this when the natural was still drying, like it wasn't completely dry. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I kind of like it because it just kind of mixes together nicely. And that's going to just darken it slightly, not super dark, but it's just going to give it a little darker tone compared to the natural. And I'm going to just let it sit for a little bit before I soak it up with the towels. And it's kind of collecting in the cracks again, so then I'm going to take my smaller one and do the same process that I did with the natural. I let that sit on there for about 5 minutes, and I'm just going to wipe it off here. And then I'm going to let that dry before I start doing the stain painting. So I let the carving dry for a good 24 hours now. So I'm going to do the kind of strategic staining. Regarding the stain, I have the original English chestnut, just the standard original color right here. And then I have a secondary one that's been diluted 50-50 with mineral spirits. So I'm going to start with that first. And I'm going to apply the 50-50 mixture to the stripes. And then I'm going to kind of work that mixture as well around the flag and pole and basically everything to establish some shadows. So, and I'm using just a very small, almost like a painting brush really. And then I have a cloth to, I guess, wipe, because if you wipe it pretty quick, you can remove it. But if you let it sit, then it's going to eventually dry. So if you make any mistakes, you should be able to wipe it with a rag. And then, like I said, the idea with creating the very
very shallow V gouge cuts to establish the stripes is to prevent bleeding, the stain from bleeding. So, and again, this is fairly new to me as well. I'm just kind of starting to experiment with this kind of stuff. But this is kind of my method I've created so far. And generally you wipe the extra stain. Like, that's a good rule of thumb with staining, is you wipe the extra, but I'm leaving it all. I'm not touching it after I paint it on here. It's just going to dry the way it is. Okay. And then the blue area with the stars is I'm going to apply the legitimate English chestnut base. No thinning at all. So we'll see how it's going to be, I would assume, quite a bit darker. Okay, now what I'm going to do is apply just some shadowing to the outsides of the bushes and rocks and the flag. And so I'm going to go back to my 50-50 mixture. I'm going about a ½ inch around the design, and then I'm using my rag to blend it and feather it from there. Now I'm just going to add a little depth in the bushes here too. And the idea is to get it in the cracks and in the deepest parts of the carving to just establish that even more, just emphasize it more. And then the parts closer to you, you just leave that. That's kind of where the dabbling comes in, is it's going to soak up the stuff that's closer to the surface and leave the stain that's further down in the deeper parts. Okay, I got it transferred on. It's not like perfect, but it's just such a tight space, and I mean, it's good enough for how I want it to be. So I've been experimenting with different methods here on how to do these stars. And again, I'm not going to actually do the star shape because that would be way too difficult because it's way too small. So what I have decided on doing is just taking a knife and putting it straight in and then kind of twisting it, almost like a hand drill. Trying my best to keep them the same size, but across 50 stars it's going to be kind of difficult, but it's actually working out pretty well. So now the carving's all done. So next I apply a sealer or like a lacquer polyurethane finishing product for protection. And what I have generally been moving to now is the spray-on lacquer. And honestly, I love it. It's matte, so it's not super glossy or anything, but it has some decent protection still. And this stuff, it's very easy to apply, and it dries in like 30 minutes to an hour. So you can spray on multiple coats, you know, within a couple hours, which is nice because there's been products in the past that I've used that you'd have to wait 24 hours, and like if you want 3 coats on the product or on the project, it would take you, I mean, it would just take you forever to finally finish the carving. So
I've been moving to this stuff and I've been really liking it. So I just apply probably 3 coats onto the carving and that would be it.